In the previous session, we have seen introduction to a request module, right? A request module in Python. Post that, we have seen how you can use some of the PyTest features, which are nothing but ordering and dependency. Ordering and dependency, right? So post that we have created some tests, right? Get method we have used, post method you have used, put method and delete method you have used to create, update and delete resources, right? So that is what a very basic things. Going ahead, you need to learn lot more things, right? So in today's session, we'll be seeing a request body, how you can create. I'll try to make you understand, right? So along with the request, what you need to do, you need to send a payload, right? So along with the request, you need to send a payload. So if you are sending a payload, what that is called as an request body, all right? So request payload or request body, lot of names are there. Along with the request, you need to send a payload. That payload is called as a request payload. So whatever the payload, upon sending a request, once you get a response, that payload is a response payload. On that response payload, you can add validations. You can add validations. How you can add validations? In Postman, you have created JavaScript functions, right? In Python, you will use assert keyword to do some validations. All right. So here, the main pain area is how you can send a payload. So what is that a payload? Which is a request payload. So request payload is nothing but a request body, right? So we'll take this post request. Why I'm taking this post request? If you want to get the details of any resource, you will use get method, right? With get method, do you send any request body? No, I will not send. But if it is post method, if you want to create any entry, if you want to create any resource in the server, along with the post method, I will use request body. I will use request body. So once a resource is created, then with the help of some ID or user ID based on some attribute, you can try to update that resource. You can try to delete that resource, right? So from where you are getting that ID, by using this post method only, with the help of request body, you'll try to create an entry in the server, right? So we'll see the most difficult part here is post method only. So you need to send the request body in the post method. Once you understood this, input or patch, you can delete also in the same way, right? So observe here. So sequence of steps involved. So first is request payload, right? So request payload you need to prepare. So request body also you can call. So in which format it is? JSON format. Is it right? So most of the APIs are REST APIs. Lot of companies are using. So they will support JSON data only. So JSON payload only, JSON body only. So first request payload you need to prepare. Then you need to send a request. Is it right? You need to send a request, right? After sending a request, you need to do response validations. You need to do response validations. Is it right? These are simple sequence of steps. Request payload you need. Once you have that request payload, I can send along with the request. And that request payload must be in JSON format only. How you got to know? Suppose it may be in text format, it may be in HTML format. By seeing the Swagger documentation, I can get to understand what type of payload an API takes or an API gives as a part of response. Sending the request, you'll get a response. On that response, you will do some validations. These are sequence of steps. Good. What is the main pain area here? So preparing the request payload or request body. If you see here in the PyCharm, I have created day one. right? So in the day one, I have created a simple HTTP methods demo test, right? You can see here, I have used this request.get method to send the request and specifying that headers. That's it. Did I specified any payload here? Yes. If it is post, I have specified. And that too, this is what the only one format. What format it is? A dictionary. So key and value pair enclosed inside curly braces, separated by comma. It is called as a dictionary. Only one way we have seen. There are multiple ways. There are multiple ways. Depending upon the requirement, you'll go for multiple ways, right? Depending upon the requirement. This is what the only one way we have seen. Similarly, in the put also for updating the data, right? We have used this dictionary format only, this payload, right? For deleting, you no need any another payload. Simply, you can try to use that user ID. You can delete a user, right? There are multiple ways. Not only this way, whatever the payload which you see here, which we have created, not only dictionary, there are multiple ways. So let us see one by one ways to create, ways to create. Right? So request to payload. Observe here, step by step I am writing. First way is dictionary. First way is dictionary. We have seen this very clearly in the yesterday session only. Next, by using JSON module. By using JSON module. Right? So dictionary is also a JSON object. But if you want to have some more complex structure in the dictionary, so it will have a strict JSON format. Then what you can do, you can go for using this JSON module. You have Python custom class. Python custom class you can create. This is another method. Python custom class is like a Pojo class in Java. If you are from Java background, you may understand this. Pojo class in Java. Pojo means a plain old Java object. Plain old Java object, right? So this is like a Pojo class. You can create a custom class in Python. You can try to specify the fields of this request payload. You can try to call that method, right? You can get the dictionary, every detail, every attribute in the form of a dictionary, right? So with the help of this Python custom class. So when you can go for this, if you have very long logic, if you want to implement some inheritance, then in that scenarios, you can go for this Python custom class creation. We'll also see that. After that, you have data classes, right? Data classes. Data classes are also like classes, simple custom classes. But here for holding the data only, you will go for data classes, not for writing custom logic, only for holding the data. Only for holding the data, we'll go for data classes, right? Sometimes your payload data may be in external file also, right? It can be CSV file, it can be JSON file, it can be uh, Excel file, it can be text file. So any type of file it is. But here at this point of time, we'll only discuss a JSON file, external JSON file. When we do data-driven testing, we'll see how different files can be used for data-driven testing. At this point of time, you're only concerned about sending the request to payload. Don't bother about those different formats. I'm only taking this external JSON file. If I have the data in an external JSON file, how you can use that data, how you can prepare a request to payload. So these are the multiple ways of creating a request to payload. So dictionary, JSON module, Python custom class, which is like a Pojo class, Python data classes you can use, and you can have the data in an external JSON file. These are multiple ways. Good. So with the help of these ways, we'll create a request to payload. We'll see that. But before going to this, there is another important feature in PyTest. So what is that? PyTest fixtures. PyTest fixtures. Why you need to use this? I'll show you going ahead. PyTest fixtures, very, very important. So PyTest fixtures, which is an important feature of PyTest, they are nothing but functions. They are nothing but functions. So what they have, they will have setup and tear down steps, setup and tear down steps, setup and tear down steps. Simply just understand this much. PyTest fixtures are functions. Fixture function have setup and tear down steps. That means you are executing a simple test case. Okay, automation script. Tell me, if you want to execute any automation script, first what you need to do, you need to open a browser. Is it right? You need to launch a browser, right? You need to launch a browser. Launch browser. Launch browser. That means this is a prerequisite, right? Before executing a test case, what is the prerequisite? Launching a browser and opening an application is a prerequisite. Is it right? So this is a prerequisite. So this prerequisite is called as an setup step. Setup step. Setup step. Good. Once you executed test case, then what you need to do? We need to close the browser. Is it right? Closing the browser. I don't want any traces of the browser instance, right? So close the browser. Close the browser. This is also an important step, which is nothing but a tear down, tear down, tear down. So before executing the test case, you need to launch a browser. After executing the test case, you need to close the browser. Is it right? Similarly, you take database connection. If you want to do some data analysis, first you need to get the data. From where you will get the data? From the database. That means connecting to the database is what a prerequisite. After getting the data, then close the connection to the database. This is another step which you need to execute after getting the data, right? So this is nothing but a tear down step, tear down step, tear down step, right? These setup step and tear down steps you can specify inside fixture functions. Inside fixture functions, let me show you one simple example so that you can understand this very clearly. We'll use this PyTest fixture function in all these ways, along with these ways, to delete the user ID which we'll be going to create, because unnecessary creation of IDs I am not using them. So that's where I will go and create. So with the help of this PyTest fixture function, observe here, I'm going to PyCharm, creating another directory. So right click on this parent directory. So mouse over onto new. So click on directory. Going ahead, we'll also create packages. Okay, package is different, directory is different, right? Just go and watch Python videos. So directory, which is day2 directory I'll create. So inside day2, I'll create a Python file, guys. Python file in the sense a module. So right click on that directory, mouse over onto new, mouse over onto Python file. Click on this Python file. So I'll give the name as per the naming conventions which we have learned. So if you want to create a module, test underscore name of that module, fixture function, right? Fixture function. This is what a name of the module, right? Fixture function. So what I will do, since fixture function, fixtures are features of PyTest, I'll import this PyTest. So import PyTest. Good. Import PyTest. I'll create a simple class test class test class. Good. This class consists of two different methods. Define test underscore login. Since it is a method, you need to have self as a keyword, right, to this function. So function with a self keyword is called as a method. That method you can create inside a class. Methods are nothing but functions which you can create inside a class. If you create a function inside a class, definitely self must be there. Thumb rule it is, right? So what I will do, when I call this method, it will print this simple message. This is login test. This is login test. Good. I'll create one more method, right? So I'll create one more method. So define test underscore search. Test underscore search. This is another method which will print upon calling. This is right. So this is search test. such a test. Good. Now I'm executing this. I'm not creating any fixture functions at this point of time. Just I have created a simple class with the methods as per naming conventions of this PyTest. Right. So click on this arrow. So you can see two tests are there. These methods are called as a test. Two test passed, and you can see this message is also, this is login test, this is such a test. I'll go to terminal also. I'll execute a command pytest hyphen s hyphen v in the day2. In the day2 you have this test underscore fixture function dot py slash slash, which is a forward slash test underscore fixture function dot py fixture function dot py. Yes, good. It is also executed successfully. Two passed in 0.11 seconds, less than 1 second only. This is login test. Test class is what? A class method. Inside that method, you have a simple print statement that is printing. So this is such a test. It is also passed. Very good. Now tell me, if you want to log in to the application to perform login test, what you need to do? You need to launch a browser. Is it right? You take Amazon also. If you want to book a product, you need to log in. Before logging in, what you need to do? You need to launch a browser. Once you launch a browser, you can log in and you can close that browser after doing some product purchase. For searching, do you need to log in? Tell me. You don't need to log in. Simply open the browser. Once you search for something, just close that browser. Right? So these are the steps involved. So what I will do, I'll create a fixture function. Right? I'll create a fixture function. So define setup is what a fixture function. Right? Setup is what a fixture function, guys. This is a function. This is not a method. A function is also a method, but function is created inside a class that is called as a method. But if you create any function outside of a class, that is not treated as a method. So this is what a function, this is what a class. You may confuse here because I am using this def keyword. Right? This is a method you are creating inside a class. This is a function. All right? So this function consists of two different actions. One is launching the browser, launching the browser, right? And you have another step, which is closing the browser. Closing the browser. Closing the browser. Very important concept it is. Closing the browser. Setup is what a fixture function. It should consist of setup and tear down steps. Tell me, this is what a prerequisite, right? Before executing any of this test, I want to launch the browser. By common sense, I can say, right? After executing any test, I want to close the browser, right? This is what a common sense. Good. So fixture function consists of setup step and a tear down step. How you can decide what is a setup step and how you can decide what is a tear down step? Good. So any step which you specify before yield keyword. Yield is what a keyword. Yield is a reserved word in Python, which is like a return. Yield is nothing but a return, guys. Yield is nothing but a return. Simply you can think of that. So before yield, if you specify any step, that is a setup step. After yield, if you specify any step, that is a tear down step. Tear down step after execution of a test case. Setup step before executing a test case. Right? So what I will do, this is what a tear down step, this is what a setup step. Is it right? So I'll define a yield keyword. Yield is one of a keyword. YIELD. So there are total 35 keywords in Python which are reserved for a specific purpose. So that purpose, for that purpose only you need to use. Yield is like a return. So before yield, I have a step, setup step, which is a prerequisite. After yield, I have another step, which is a tear down step. So before executing this method and after executing this method, these setup and tear down steps needs to be executed. Good. So this is what a fixture function. Is it right? So which is a feature of PyTest. So what you need to do, you need to call a fixture function decorator. So simply decorator, PyTest fixture decorator at the rate PyTest dot fixture, PyTest dot fixture, PyTest dot fixture on any function, if you specify this at the rate PyTest dot fixture, which is a decorator, that function is called as an fixture function. That function is called as an fixture function. By default, this fixture function is having function scope. There are multiple scopes: function scope, class scope, module scope, session scope. By default, fixture function will be having function scope, right? By default, it is having that function scope. You can see this is how it is implemented, right? Scope is what a parameter to this fixture function. By default, the scope is function. That means before executing this method, this fixture function will be called. After executing this method, this fixture function will be called. And before executing this test method, this fixture function will be called. After executing this fixture function, test method, this fixture function will be called. That is what the scope. The same fixture function will be having another scope, which is a class scope, before executing entire class and after executing the class. If it is a module, before executing the module, after executing the module. If it is a session, before creation of the session, after creation of a session. Like this, you have three different scopes. I'm not discussing all those things, only one scope I'm discussing, which is function scope. By default, it is a function scope. Right now, once you define this fixture function, you can just call that function as an argument to the test method which you want to execute. Right? So this is what a test method which I want to execute some prerequisite, which I specified in the form of a fixture function. So I'll just pass that as an input. Similarly, for this fixture function, I'll try to pass an input to this test search, self comma setup, self comma setup. That's it. If you have this input to this test method, before executing this test method, setup step will be executed. After executing this test method, tear down step will be executed before yield and after yield. Observe here, I'm not executing entire class, executing a simple test method. Click on this arrow. You can see here one passed. What is that? So test login is what a method, because I have executed that. So if you execute, definitely this message needs to be printed. Is it right? Yes, that is printed. But before printing of this message, you can see there is another message, launching a browser. From where it is getting? From fixture function. From fixture function it is getting, guys. You can see launching the browser. And after printing this, that means after executing of this login test, it is printing another information, which is closing the browser. How it is printing? This is what a tear down step, which is defined in the form of a fixture function. So setup and tear down steps you can define in fixture function, right? So fixture function, right? So fixture function is not defined in the same module like the way which you see here. It is defined in the conf test file, conf.test.py. So this is what a file which will consist of fixture functions. Right? So going ahead, we'll also see this. But at this point of time, just to understand this much, one by one, you need to understand. Right? So this fixture function feature in PyTest, I'll try to use when I'm creating a user. Right? So what I will do, I'll try to use students API, guys. Right? Students API. Right? So in the day 2 of discussing this Postman, we have created some students files, which is a students.json. We have installed Node.js. We have installed npm package manager along with Node.js. We have installed JSON server, right, to create our own API, right? So that API I will use, right, by using the students.json file. Then we'll create our own methods, right? So with the help of these different ways, we'll create our own test methods, right? So what I have done, I have already prepared the students.json, right? Students.json. So Control C, I'll paste it in day 2. I'm just pasting it here, guys. So this is what a students.json, right? A students JSON file it is. So with the help of this JSON file, I'll try to create my own API, right? You can create your own API, dummy API. That's what we have seen that. The same here I'm doing. So to start this JSON, so that you can create your own API, what you need to do, what command I need to execute, JSON-server, right? So JSON-server hyphen watch, right? students.json, right? This is what a command where you need to execute. Wherever you have specified this students.json, go to that location, open the command prompt. In that command prompt, execute this command. Is it right? That's what we have seen. I'll take this. I'll go to PyCharm only. I will not open any command prompt, anything here. Why? One beautiful support from PyCharm is a terminal which is integrated in that only, right? Which is integrated. So what I will do, I'll use that feature. So click on this terminal, right? So click on this terminal where you specify this students.json in day 2, right? Go to day 2. So how we can go cd day 2, cd day 2. Cd means a change directory. I'll specify that. Go to the directory cd day 2, right? cd day 2. So right now you are in this parent directory. This parent directory consists of a child directory. In that child directory, I have the students.json. So I'm going to the location where I kept this students.json and I'll execute this command. All right. So when I use this cd day 2, you can see right now I'm in day 2. So in the day 2 only, I have the students.json, right? I'll use this command json-server hyphen watch students.json, right? You can just use this and you can just paste it here. That's it. Click on enter. You can see it is giving me an endpoint. So control click on this endpoint. So it will open that in some URL. This is what an endpoint, right? You can see the same data. I'll create a student, right? By using post method, by using these 3 different ways, right? Not only 3, multiple ways. Dictionary, JSON, Python class, data class, external JSON file. So multiple ways, these are all. That's it. Only multiple ways. Other all validations remains common because we are using only one post method to create a student, right? So I'll create another module. Don't close this terminal. If you close this, you won't be able to access this API. So keep that API running. So you can just minimize this. Good. Now I'll create another module here. So test underscore post request body examples. Post request body examples. Good. So I'll import few important packages what are all required. So I'll import a request module, right? So I'll import JSON module also if it is required. So I can use that, right? JSON library. This is what one of the way to create a request body, right? Request payload, right? So you can also define a student ID, right? So with the help of this students API, I can create a student. Is it right? Once you create a student, you will get the ID. That ID I will capture. Right? So that ID is required to update that student, to delete that student. So ID is what an important parameter. You can capture that. So at the very beginning, I don't have this ID. Going ahead on subsequent operations, I'll get this student ID. So to store that, I'll try to define that student ID as a variable, as a global variable. right? So outside of the functions which I'm going to create. So at the very beginning, I don't have any value in this. So that's where it is none, right? So that's where it is none. So what type of variable it is? Any variable which you defined outside of a function, that is called as a global variable. Global variable. Very important point. It is global variable, local variable, class variable, right? Different variables you have, right? So good. And if you see what type of content type it is application slash JSON, right? Which is a meme type, right? So that part I'll be using it here. I'll just pass that as a request header. This is what a request header. So when you go to Postman, right? So let me open the Postman. I'll open the Postman, right? So if you go to this day 2 students API, so different types of request I have sent: get, post, put, delete. But majorly I'm discussing here with the post. Why? You need to send a body. This body I need to send. This body I need to create. For creating multiple ways. If you understand how you can create the same syntax you can use for creating this update user request. For deleting, you don't need any body, right? You take this create user and go to headers and go to headers. You can see content type is application slash JSON. This is what an important meme type, guys. What type of data that request is accepting, whether it is PDF, whether it is a text, that is what determined by this content type, which is a meme type. So that is what you need to send as a part of headers. So other all not at all required, and you don't need its authorization also. No auth you can specify, and once you click on send, it can create a student, right? The same I am doing it here with the help of a script, right? First way is by using this dictionary, right? So multiple ways are there. I'll try to show you this multiple ways. Multiple ways. So first is by using dictionary, right? By using dictionary, I'll create a function, right? So observe here, define test underscore create student, right? So create student using dictionary, right? Using dictionary. You need to follow the naming convention. Otherwise, it is very difficult. You won't be able to execute that method, right? So I'll create that student. First thing is by using dictionary. So dictionary is nothing but a key value pair, right? So which is separated by comma and enclosed inside curly braces, right? So request body, which is a dictionary. So you can see key value pairs. Name of the student is Scott. Location is France. Mobile number is 123456. Courses he is taking C and C++. This is what a request body I'm trying to create using dictionary. I'm trying to create using dictionary. So you need to send this request body, right? You need to send this request body. So along with the post request, So how you can call that post method here? Request, right? So request is what? A module. Module consists of a function, which is nothing but a post function. For get function. For post function. Good. So you need a request URL, right? For get method it is, for post method it is, for create method. So any type of method. So you need an endpoint, is it right? So this is what an endpoint and this is what a base URL. So what I will do, since base URL is common, I'll try to define that base URL as a global variable only, right? I'll try to use that, right? So base URL, right? So base URL at the global level. I'm trying to define this base URL. That's it. So I'll use this URL for sending the request, right? So when I call that variable here, so base URL, right? So base URL. So that base URL you'll get here the same way you can see here. So instead of hard coding the entire request URL, what I have done, I have defined that in some variable at a global level. So if I define any variable at a global level, so whatever the functions which I create across all the functions, I can access this global variable, right? So request dot post, and you need to send a body, request body. So in the form of JSON, you need to spend, right? So you can see, observe here, guys. I'm going to this post. One important observation. You have two parameters. One is data and the other is JSON. Data is also nothing but a request payload. JSON is also nothing but a request payload. But when to use data, when to use JSON? If you use JSON, whatever the data which you are sending, that means it is application slash JSON. Automatically it will take. If you want to explicitly specify the request header, then go for data. Data as a input. You can use JSON, you can use a data. But if you want to automatically send that request header, which is application slash JSON, go for JSON. Along with this request header, if you are also sending few more headers, go for this data. So at this point of time, I have only this request header. I can go for JSON without specifying this, or directly you can go for data and you can specify this request headers. Let me show you both the ways. So request.post URL, comma, you need to send a payload, comma, JSON equal to, what is that JSON? In the form of a dictionary I specified. So request to header, request body, JSON equal to request body. JSON equal to request body, right? So very, very important thing it here. Observe here. This request body is itself in the form of a JSON. Even though it is a dictionary, it is looking like a JSON. Is it right? That means this JSON should automatically understand that it is a JSON. So it should set this content type header as application slash JSON without passing a specific parameter here. So what is that? What we have done yesterday, right? If you go to this methods, I have specified another parameter which is headers. You don't need to specify this parameter. Why? You are specifying a JSON payload. So that JSON, if you specify this JSON, automatically the request headers are set to this application slash JSON. Suppose if you want to explicitly specify the content type, which is a request header, which is a meme type, you can go for data. So if I specify JSON here, I don't need to specify headers. Right? So here at this point of time, only I have content type. Along with this content type, I have few more headers, whatever it is defined at the time of API development. So at those cases, this is not sufficient. You can go for data. At this point of time, since I have only one header, which I need to use, I need to specify that headers parameter. Simply, you can use this JSON body, right? Simply, you can use that JSON body, right? So let me tell you when you can use JSON parameter, when you can use data parameter. Observe here. In the day one session, you have this JSON parameter. When you are sending the data in JSON format, like Python dictionary, and want request to automatically convert it to a JSON string and set the correct content type. It should automatically set the current content type header. You can go for JSON parameter, right? Suppose if you see the payload is JSON, like a dictionary, you don't need to pass any request parameter. But when you are sending the form data or any data that is a serialized data like a JSON string, right? JSON string or a file. If you are reading any data from a file, that means it is not purely a JSON. So what you need to do, you need to make the server to understand that it is a JSON, application slash JSON. That means the communication, the data which I am sending is a JSON format. So in that case, what you need to do, you need to specify the data and you need to pass this headers. Headers keyword content type application slash JSON. Data explicitly specify that headers. You are asking server to understand whatever the data which I am sending, which is a JSON format it is. But if the entire data which is like a dictionary, that itself is a JSON object. So you don't need to pass, automatic conversion is happening. So server will understand when you use this JSON. If you are explicitly specifying that headers, go for this data. Right? This is what just to understand at this point of time. So very important thing it is. So what I will do, since I have this dictionary data, which is a JSON data, I'm not specifying any header keyword. Simply go for JSON. So automatically the content type header is set to this application/JSON. If you want to explicitly specify, so I have defined a variable request headers, you can just pass that. At this point of time, I'll show you two ways. You can just use that two ways. Good. This is how the structure looks like. Request.post, base URL, and request body. Once you send a request, I'll get a response, right? I'll store that response in some variable. I'll do some validations, right? So how you can do some validations by using assert keyword, right? Assert keyword. Observe here. So I'll specify that as a response, right? So response. I'll capture the response in some variable. On that response, I'm doing some validation. Response will be having status code, response.status code. When you create any resource in the server, what status code you will get? 201 is what a status code. If status code is not 201, this condition will fail. If this condition will fail, assert will raise assertion error. At the time of raising an error, it will print this message, right? So assert condition and a message. If the condition is true, it will not print this message. If this condition is not meeting the required thing, so what it will do, it will raise this message. I'm capturing that entire response in the form of a JSON in some variable response body. So response.json, which is like a dictionary. In the dictionary, you can capture a specific value, right? So response body consists of name. Get that Scott value. Just equate that. If the name is equal to Scott or not. The simple way you can see, I'm sending this request in Postman. Is it right? Is it the response which it is giving? It is get. Let me take the post. So I'm sending the request with the body. You can see it is what a JSON response which it is giving. So in this JSON response, I have JSON name key, location key, phone key, courses key. Courses key again is what a list, which is like an array. List in Python, array in JavaScript. If you want to access a specific value, you can go for indexing, right? The simple validation I'm doing. So get the name value, name key value, location key value, just equate that whether it is equal to France, equating nothing but here content comparing. Double equal to, you need to understand this very important difference. Lot of people will have confusion. Single equal to is for assignment. If you want to assign any data in some variable, you can go for this single equal to. If you are comparing the content, you can go for double equal to, content comparison, right? So content comparison. Content comparison, very important point, right? Lot of people will have confusion, right? I'm getting the name key value, just equating, just comparing that to Scott. If this is not equal, if this is not true, just raise an error. Name is not correct. Similarly, location, I'm capturing phone. Courses, which is a list, inside a list to access an item, you can go for indexing. First element 0, second element 1. First element must be C. Is it right? That's what I'm sending. Second element will be C++, right? That's what I'm trying to do some assertions. And in this response, you have this ID. Is it right? You have this ID. That ID I need to update that student, to delete that student. So what I can do, I can capture that ID also, which is a key in this dictionary. The same syntax, dictionary of key name. It will get the value, store it in some variable. So student ID. The student ID, which is none here. When you try to create a resource, I'll try to get that student ID and store it in some variable. So it will be set here. You can use across all the functions which you are going to create. At this point of time, I'm not updating anything. We're only seeing how you can try to create a request to payload. That's it. And printing the response, right? So you can see I have already opened this. I'm refreshing this. 03 D1 Scott France 1 2 3 4 5 6. This is already created just now by using this post request in Postman. The same I'll try to simulate in PyCharm, right? So click on this arrow, click on run. It is passed. These assertions are also passed because it is getting an expected data, right? So what is that ID 6C0C? Go to here, refresh this one more time. So you can see 6C0C, Scott, France, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the same data which you sent along with the request. I have got that. Is it right? How beautiful it is able to create the resource in the server. You can observe here. Another way is by using JSON module, right? Another way is by using JSON module. Before seeing that, let me show you. So when you can use that data also, right? So data, if you use, you need to manually ask to understand this. So instead of JSON, I'm going for data, right? If you are using this data parameter, right? So explicitly specify, right, headers, right? So request headers, which I defined here. You can use that request headers. You need to manually specify because server won't understand. If you specify JSON, server will understand. So whatever the data which you are sending, that is what a JSON. So content type header is automatically set to application/JSON. If you are using data, you need to explicitly set this header parameter value, request headers. That's it. So let me execute this one more time by going to terminal. So don't close this. So click on this plus, it will open another terminal. Just execute this. PyTest -s -v in the day2 you have. So day2/test underscore. So what is that? Post request body examples.py. Post request body examples.py. That's it. Click on enter. So you can see no test ran. So it is saying, so file not found, day 2 it is, right? So day 2. You need to be very careful. So day 2 it is. Now it is also failed. So why? The issue here is I'm not converting that request body to JSON string, right? So why? What is the reason? By default, data parameter sends form data, right? Data parameter sends form data, right? So data parameter sends form data, So whatever the data which you specified here, right? So this is what a dictionary, but this dictionary also will be sent as a form data. So how? Let me take this request body here, right? Let me use that here, right? So if you see, instead of this comma, so what it will do, it will use and. It will use and it will send, right? I'm showing these two key values, right? So observe here. It will try to send this. Tell me, is it a JSON? No, it is not a JSON. This is a form data. When you use data parameters, even though you specify that as a dictionary, it will be sent as a form data like this. It will use and instead of comma. So what you need to do, you need to convert this form data to JSON string. So how you can convert? By using this JSON dot dumps. So it will try to convert this form data into JSON string, right? This form data into JSON string. See, by default, this JSON expects this raw JSON string. This is what a raw JSON string, whatever you define, which is in the JSON format, which is in the dictionary format, that will be passed here. But when you use a data, the data will be sent as a form data. So JSON dot dumps you need to use to convert that form data to JSON data. So upon converting, you need to ask server. Server don't know because you are specifying this data parameter. You are converting that manually to JSON string, not automatic conversion. It is happening. I'm converting that manually. So if manual conversion is there, server will not understand. You need to ask a server to understand that whatever the data which you are sending is what a JSON data, right? So application/JSON. If you are using JSON, so automatic conversion will be converted to a JSON, right? So it is automatic. But if you use a data form data, it will send. You are converting manually that form data to JSON string data, right? So you need to explicitly ask server to understand the data which you are sending is application/JSON. right? So very important point it is, right? So try to understand this. Now what I will do, I'll try to send this. Yes, now it is getting executed and it has created this ID 29F0, right? So if you see 29F0, yes, it has created a student with this data, Scott, France, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, even though you have the same data at this point of time, since it is a dummy data, you can expect the same IDs, right? Very important observation. When you are using data parameter, by default data will be sent as a form data. You need to convert that form data into a JSON string by using this JSON.dumps. You are converting manually. You need to ask a server to understand if the data which you are specifying or which you are sending is itself a JSON data. You don't need to have this request headers, right? Headers you don't need to have. But if you are doing manual conversion, right, with the data parameter, right, go for this explicitly specifying the headers.